Enablers who never change. Recognizing when to let go. Welcome back. I'm Adeline Atlas, 11 times published author, and this is the Family Roles series. Today's video is the final installment in the enabler arc, and it's the one most survivors hope they'll never need. Because it's about acceptance, not of abuse, not of dysfunction, but of limits. This is the episode for when you've tried everything. When you've explained, cried, sent articles, written letters, and begged them to see. This is for the moment you realize the enabler you love may never leave the role. Not because they're incapable, but because they don't want to. Let's begin with the myth of future insight. One of the deepest hopes scapegoats carry is that the enabler will one day wake up. That some final piece of evidence, some breakthrough conversation, or some rock-bottom moment will shake them free from their allegiance to the narcissist and the system. You replay conversations in your mind, wondering if you had said it better, explained it slower, or waited for the right time. Maybe they would have seen the truth. But here's the painful truth most survivors eventually learn. The enabler already saw enough, and they chose not to act. The enabler's refusal to change isn't always rooted in ignorance. Often, it's a choice made over and over again to prioritize emotional safety over moral clarity. The system gives them a role. Stay calm, smooth things over, keep the peace. And the longer they've played that role, the more their identity fuses with it. Admitting the truth that they enabled harm, betrayed trust, or protected an abuser would collapse their entire self-image. So instead of changing, they double down. They minimize. They spiritualize. They rationalize. And most heartbreakingly, they blame you for making it hard. When you confront an enabler who refuses to change, something strange often happens. Instead of meeting your pain with reflection or accountability, they react with defensiveness. They say things like, "Well, yeah, you're being too harsh," or "You don't understand how hard it's been for me." Suddenly, the conversation is no longer about the harm you endured, but about how uncomfortable they feel being asked to witness it. They claim to be victims of your truth-telling. They say your standards are unrealistic, that you expect perfection, that you're the one unwilling to let go. This reversal isn't random, it's protection. Not of you, of the system. Because enablers who won't change are deeply committed to the family narrative. Not because it's healthy, but because it's stable. In their mind, disruption equals danger. If the scapegoat is telling the truth, then the whole family illusion collapses. And if it collapses, the enabler has to feel everything they've avoided for decades: guilt, shame, complicity, fear. So instead, they suppress the truth teller. Not by overt attack, but by emotional invalidation. They'll tell you, "I just want to move on. Why dig all this up again?" Or, "That was a long time ago." And they'll believe it. Because to them, your healing is a threat to their peace. You might find yourself caught in cycles of confrontation. You try to explain again. You point to patterns. You name the trauma. You speak calmly, maybe even kindly. But it doesn't matter. The enabler responds with avoidance, deflection, or subtle ridicule. They might call you too intense or obsessed with the past. They may refuse to read what you send them. They may even tell others you're unstable, dramatic, or not well. Not because they're trying to destroy you, but because admitting your truth would dismantle theirs. This is why trying harder doesn't work. With enablers who never change, the issue isn't that you haven't explained well enough. It's that your truth requires them to become someone else. And not everyone is willing to go through that transformation. Some people will protect their image even if it means sacrificing their integrity. Some people will cling to roles they understand, even if those roles require them to abandon those they claim to love. One of the hardest truths for survivors is realizing that the enabler may love you conditionally. They may love the version of you who stays quiet, stays small, stays soft. But the version of you that speaks, questions, and confronts? That version gets pushed away. And that rejection doesn't always look like shouting. It looks like ghosting, cold texts, avoided visits, gossip behind your back, and perhaps most confusing of all, polite distance. The enabler doesn't tell you you're wrong. They just stop engaging. And that silence becomes an answer. So how do you know when to let go? Not out of punishment, not out of revenge, but out of self-respect? You know when every conversation becomes circular, when every boundary is treated like an offense, when your healing feels like a burden, when you find yourself emotionally exhausted after every interaction, questioning your sanity, rewording your feelings, just to keep the peace. You know when the relationship begins to feel like gaslighting masked as care. That's when letting go becomes an act of compassion. Not just for them, but for yourself. Letting go doesn't mean you don't love them. It means you've stopped sacrificing your healing for their comfort. It means you no longer believe that proximity equals closeness. It means you recognize that your worth is not dependent on their approval. And it means you're willing to grieve the loss of someone who is still alive, because the version of them you hoped would emerge simply won't. This grief is complex. You may still see glimpses of the good, the shared jokes, the childhood memories, the gentleness that once made you believe they were safe. But now, you understand that goodness does not cancel out harm. That kindness, without accountability, becomes a mask. And that love, without courage, can become complicity. You don't have to become bitter, but you do have to become clear. And the clarity is this: some enablers will never leave the role. Not because you failed to inspire them, but because they need the system more than they need the truth. And no amount of pleading will change that. Not because your truth isn't real, but because their denial is stronger than their love. This clarity allows you to release the performance, to stop trying to fix, teach, or rescue someone who benefits from not understanding you, to stop searching for language that makes your pain more palatable to someone who refuses to digest it, and to stop delaying your healing for the fantasy of reunion. Letting go is not giving up. It's honoring reality. It's choosing peace over performance. And it's making space for the kind of love that doesn't require you to split yourself into pieces to be accepted. Hi, I'm Adeline Atlas, 11 times published author, and what you just watched is part of my signature program, the Chosen One series inside School of Soul. This series is not just a course, it's a blueprint for those who know they were different from the start. The black sheep, the scapegoat, the truth teller, the cycle breaker. Inside, you'll discover the family roles playbook, the golden child, the scapegoat, the enabler, the lost child, and how to finally step out of the part you were cast in without consent. How the black sheep becomes the goat, turning rejection into radical transformation and leadership. How to break generational curses and rewrite ancestral contracts so the pain stops with you. And how to recognize and escape modern forms of spiritual and technological targeting, from gang stalking to synthetic synchronicity. This isn't just about survival. It's about awakening, about reclaiming your voice, your lineage, and your destiny as one of the chosen ones. Click the link below to access the full series now, because the role ends the moment you decide it does, and the real script begins with you.